Day.
Ballot item number 2, private member's notice of motion number 7, Mr. McDonnell.
Mr. McDonough, the member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that, in the opinion of this House, the Ministry of Transportation should institute a 5-business-day service guarantee for reinstating driver's licenses suspended for medical reasons following the certification by a physician that the person is fit to drive.
Mr. McDonough has moved private member notice of motion number 7. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for his presentation.
Thank you, Speaker. We are representatives of the people of Ontario. We are trusted by our riding's voters to make decisions and implement policies that are good for everyone. Getting your driver's license is a rite of passage for many young Ontarians, especially in rural Ontario. Being able to own and drive a vehicle gives you the independence and mobility that allows you to seek employment wherever you please, take care of friends and family who can't drive. Rural residents are particularly dependent on their vehicles and their licenses. The closest grocery store could be 50 or 100 kilometers away, while the closest health facility is likely to be in a larger city such as Cornwall, Brockville, or Ottawa. In rural Ontario, driving isn't just a choice, it's a necessity. Where I grew up in Lancaster Township, the closest corner grocery store was over 5 kilometers away. My high school was 25 kilometers away, and the nearest hospital was over 50. As you can see, driving a car was a necessity for my family, especially since the local corner grocery store has closed under this Liberal government's reign, unable to survive the excessive regulations, taxes, and fees. The Ministry of Transportation has the duty to ensure Ontario's roads are safe for all users. When someone's health could make them an unsafe driver, medical professionals must take away the license and notify the ministry. Public safety is everyone's concern, and I doubt anyone in this chamber would debate a physician's educated opinion about a patient's fitness to control a vehicle. These suspensions are not permanent. They are just enforced until the MTO receives a physician's report stating that the person is again capable of driving a vehicle safely. MTO, however, is slow and prone to mistakes when processing these reports. Over the years, my office and the offices of many of my colleagues has received many constituents' complaints about the delay in getting their licenses reinstated. The Ministry's response on all our inquiries has always been to wait 30 business days and not bother inquiring about the file until that deadline is passed. And it was disheartening to tell my constituents the news. For every suspended healthy driver caught in this artificially long wait time, there are stories of lost earnings, missed medical appointments, loss of employment, and a very clear risk of financial hardship. My constituents have had enough, and we've launched a petition to fix this problem. And I read that into the record just today. The petition follows a very simple principle. If it takes hours to suspend a license based on the physician's advice, it shouldn't take 6 weeks to take a physician's advice to the contrary. My constituents ask for a reasonable time frame within which to deliver a reinstatement once the doctor has cleared the driver, and we believe that is 5 business days. Such a time frame allows the ministry plenty of time to review the medical documents for completeness. Despite still being an inconvenience to the constituent, we would need to take a week of what is essentially unpaid leave. As soon as the petition was launched, a steady stream of frustrated residents of Stormont Dundas and South Glengarry came to my office and signed it. So far, over 300 signatures and more coming in every day. To even our surprise, we managed to achieve almost immediate success. The ministry immediately changed its tone when dealing with the medical review cases, assuring us and constituents that the average processing time was indeed decreasing. All this after being told just before the petition that don't bother calling until 6 weeks have passed. Speaker, it shouldn't take the intervention of a member's office or a public frustration to boil over into a petition to prod a public service to actually work better for us. I cannot see how a system so stubbornly rigid one day can improve overnight. Coincidentally, following the recent release of a petition demanding better service from the medical review section. Before our petition was launched, the medical review section had also indicated to some constituents who had had to submit additional documents they would be credited with some waiting time they'd actually had to endure. This was a clear indication as any that the 30 business day delay wasn't a matter of backlogs or justified review time. It was an artificially imposed deadline and enforced. This is why it's important for this legislature to demand of the Ministry of Transportation make it a clear, measurable commitment to serving our drivers better. In a response to the petition I presented, the Minister of Transportation stated that the division was meeting or exceeding the service guarantee, meaning that they were reviewing files on a shorter timescale. I am pleased that the ministry recognized that there was a problem in the medical review section and took steps, whichever they were, to address at least part of the delay, however small. The issue, however, has not gone away. Ontarians deserve to be served promptly and efficiently by their government. Our residents and businesses already pay through the nose for this government spending, despite seeing frontline and essential public services becoming less and less accessible. Medical reviews of driver's license suspensions are an essential service. Without prompt and guaranteed service in this area, residents of rural Ontario and all workers who depend on their driver's license in order to work are at risk of losing their jobs. Long and unnecessary suspensions cause businesses to lose money and workers to lose earnings. What is a temporary suspended worker to tell his employer? As things stand today, workers, owner-operators, and caregivers must tell those who depend on them that they need alternative arrangements for 6 weeks. The minister can parade his meeting and exceeding talking points all he wishes. However, it doesn't change the insensitive stance taken by this department. The stance boils down to you're out of a license for 6 weeks, period. Consider any day less than that a gift from us. Speaker, good and prompt service isn't for the government to bestow upon us, akin to a ruler's bounty for their people. We have, through our taxes and fees, given this government the funds necessary to deliver the public service a province such as Ontario could be proud of. Instead of spending that responsibly, the current government has caused waste and a culture of entitlement to spread through all departments. 30 business days to take a physician's advice is not a service, especially when it only takes hours to take the same advice to pull a license in the first place. Here are a couple examples of the way the medical review section has failed my constituents. A high incidence of wait times in excess of even the 30 business day time frame. Numerous constituents' medical reports are lost by the ministry, with the situation only rectified through our office's intervention. Constituents were given conflicting information by the ministry on whether their licenses were suspended or not, and in one case giving a person the impression their license would be suspended in a few weeks, and then sending the same person a letter telling them that the license was already suspended. This is irresponsible and can make an unwilling criminal of a perfectly innocent and safe driver. It's just not justifiable. This motion is about a simple principle: transparent, accountable, prompt service for all Ontario residents. The Ministry of Transportation is already processing driver license reinstatements faster than the stated 30-day service guarantee. This is a question of service. When Ontarians who depend on their driver's license tell those who depend on them they'll have to wait, I want them to be able to tell confidently that they will be out of a license for just a few days rather than 6 weeks. The unjustifiable long service guarantee isn't just an artificial number concocted within the ministry for internal use. It's a real source of frustration for all those caught up in the process. It is the only reference drivers can give their clients, their employers, their loved ones, Since the ministry is already able to process these files faster, it should improve the service guarantee to reflect this new, improved situation. Ontarians are ready to endure a week-long inconvenience for the sake of a strong public safety. Telling them that they must wait 6 weeks is just insensitive and cruel. So I'm asking this government and this chamber to make a commitment to service to those who elect us, to those who, through their hard work and dedication, build businesses, innovate, work, raise families, and allow this government to function. The PC caucus and my message to Ontario drivers is clear. We are here for you. We are with you, and we know you wish to be safe as much as you want to, and we want you to keep it that way. My message to the government is even clearer. Commit to serving the people of this province and commit to giving them better service than the unjustifiably slow one you guarantee today. Despite being able to deliver better, you can deliver faster. Be proud of it and make that new, better public a standard. You have nothing to lose. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Further debate. I recognize the member from Algoma Manitoulin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. How come you're having a hard time with that one? We're always in committee, and we know each other. Anyways, I'm pleased to stand here on behalf of the great people of Algoma Manitoulin and add my voice to this motion. And I actually want to commend the member because as he is experiencing, as many of our constituency offices are experiencing, this is one of those problems that we need to deal with. Too many individuals are suffering huge losses. Families are being hurt, income is being closed, jobs are being lost, and hardship is being incurred. So I commend the member for bringing this forward, and I'm 100% in favour of this motion, as this issue is one that I see consistently in my office. And I say I sometimes get to talk to the constituents about their challenges that they're having as far as getting their reinstatement, but it's my front line that is dealing with this. It's my constituency staff, and I know that Grant, Cindy, and Vicky are at the constituency office right now, and they're the ones that deal with the people that come in every single day with a variety of issues, and this is one that they were quite excited to actually help out and provide me with some background as far as what they've been hearing through the constituency office. Like I said, my staff has been working with this for a very long time. As it stands now, the MTO has 30-day review policy. However, in most cases, MTO reviews the client's file towards the end of that 30-day deadline. So what that means, it doesn't matter, is you come in with the information, thank you very much, it goes on top of the file, and I'll look at it in 30 days. So you've lost 30 days there. Basically, if you could give this 5-day guarantee that you'll be able to look at that information and reinstate that license to that individual, that's what we're looking for, and that's what the member is calling for, which is common sense. Something that we should be using a little bit more in this legislature. The MTO will require further information, delaying it again, thus mailing it out to the individual. By the time he gets his mail, he has to reset another doctor's appointment. A further delay is happening because guess what? In Northern Ontario, in order to see your family doctor, you're looking at anywhere between, if you're lucky, about a month to a month and a half. Once the client has obtained the request information and it is submitted to MTO by themselves or by their doctor, a new 30-day waiting period begins. And so continues the vicious circle. And it just goes on and on and on. And the delay happens and delay and delay and delay. Meantime, this guy's individual or this woman is losing on an opportunity for a job, is going through drastic hardship, their income is not coming in, and they're facing some really tough financial hardship. My office has received several calls from transport drivers, bus drivers, and couriers regarding their suspended licenses due to medical forms reports having to be reviewed by MTO. In most cases, these individuals are months without a license, which directly impacts their work income and in some cases has led to job loss because of delayed in the review process. We have had several constituents contact our office because they have been without a license for over 12 months, Madam Speaker, due to the current MTO medical review process. My constituency staff have been dealing with one case in particular where a constituent approached my office for assistance after his driver's license was suspended because his medical report contained a medication that in some cases is used for the treatment of epilepsy. He didn't have epilepsy, Madam Speaker. MTO made the assumption that he was epileptic and suspended his license when in fact this medication was prescribed to him for migraine headaches. To date, his license is still suspended until the doctor submits proof that his patient does not have epilepsy. In order to satisfy MTO, the doctor is contemplating sending him for an MRI as proof that he doesn't have epilepsy, thus further delaying the reinstatement of his driver's license. Can you imagine the time and effort? And mind you, these doctors aren't readily available for review in our communities, as well having to resort to referring his patient for unnecessary state testing is a waste of healthcare resources and leaves the constituent unemployed until the matter is finally resolved. These are only some of the cases that we deal with. A gentleman who, again, had a problem with his eyes, was required to go to an optometrist, went to the optometrist, sent in the information. The information came back. The MTO weren't satisfied with the test that he took. They wanted him to go for an octopi, not a WI optometry test. They sent him back, got that test again, sent it in. Meantime, Madam Speaker, we're talking about 90 days now. And this individual lost on a perfect opportunity in order to get the employment that he was looking for, created some hardship, and basically it's unnecessary. And I wholeheartedly support the member's motion as it's presented forward, and I hope that we can actually deal with this so that a lot of our constituency office and every single one of us in this room knows that this is an issue and knows that how we could tackle this to handle it. And I hope that we have struck an ear on the other side of the table so that we can actually address this problem, because it is one that is bureaucratic. And I see my friend, I know that I've struck your ear, and I hope that we can work together along with the member that proposed this bill in order to handle this and fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate. I recognize the member from Kitchener Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Transportation, I'm very pleased to join the discussion this afternoon on Motion 7. And let me start by saying that it's very important to point out that our government does care very deeply about the safety of our province's roads, including the safety of all road users. In fact, we have the second safest roads in all of North America. And I know that our government's mandatory reporting process for physicians and optometrists is a very important way that we are working to ensure that our roads remain safe. Now, as of October 2014, if a physician or an optometrist has a patient who is 16 years of age or older with a medical or vision condition that may make it unsafe for them to drive, the medical professional has a duty to report that information. The motion that we're debating today, Motion 7, specifically looks at cutting the time it takes for the Ministry of Transportation to reinstate a person's license if the license was suspended for medical reasons. At my constituency office in Kitchener Centre, my staff has on a number of occasions dealt with cases involving licenses that were suspended for medical reasons, and they work very quickly to resolve these issues. I can tell you that our government is already meeting or exceeding customer service standards for reviewing medical reports and responding to Ontarians on the status of their licenses. Now, this year, 99.5% of medical reports were processed within the 30-day customer standard, and 90% were processed within 10 days. So that's very impressive. In order to be fair to all drivers, the ministry reviews these reports on a first-come, first-served basis. Madam Speaker, it's clear that this process is meeting customers' needs while maintaining the important balance between road safety and ensuring Ontarians' mobility. And as I mentioned earlier, our government's record on road safety is clear. In June of 2015, our government passed Bill 31. And with the passage of this bill, we're committed to making our roads even safer by expanding medical reporting requirements, clarifying mandatory and discretionary reporting requirements in future regulation, and setting out what specific driver information must be provided on mandatory forms. I know that members on both sides of this House value these commitments, as Bill 31, the Making Ontario's Roads Safer Act, was passed with all party support. So we did have their support on this particular bill. They know that it's important as well. Speaker, I would also like to take some time to talk to you about the ongoing work that we're doing to continually strengthen the medical review process. This work includes frequent conversations with medical professionals. I know you previously, in your previous life, were a medical professional. You served as a nurse. Currently, these discussions are focusing on identifying specific high-risk medical conditions and functional challenges that should be included in the mandatory reporting process, and additional medical professionals that should be included in reporting legislation. We know that this work is going to help to improve an already strong reporting process. However, we're also aware that work is being undertaken to ensure this process continues to meet Ontarians' customer service expectations for many years to come. This work includes improving medical reporting forms, working with staff to maximize the use of technology for faster, more efficient case processing, and introducing electronic medical reporting that's going to see physicians submitting information electronically, allowing some forms to be processed automatically. Speaker, it's very important that all members of this House know how the government applies medical standards. Our approach is balanced, using medical standards outlined under the Highway Traffic Act, national standards created by the Canadian Council of Motor Transportation Administrators, and through consultation with doctors and nurse practitioners for more complex cases. For such cases, the ministry has the support of its Medical Advisory Committee, which is made up of 19 physicians who have a variety of medical specializations. It's clear that our province's medical professionals are at the heart of this process, and this makes us more confident in the process that the government is unwavering in its commitment to road safety. We understand the appeal of the convenience of being presented by the MPP from Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry with his motion, but this is not a process that we are willing to rush. There is too much at stake, and we will never compromise the safety of our roads. Speaker, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak in today's debate, and I want to thank all the members of this House for participating. Thank you.
Further debate. I recognize the member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
Yes, well, thank you, Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this proposal brought forward by my colleague from Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry to address one of a series of concerns relating to medical license review that flood our offices every year. Speaker, I have had no doubt that if you polled MPPs here in the House today, you wouldn't be able to find one whose office isn't dealing with the impacts related to waiting times faced by those who are rightly or wrongly dropped into the medical license review system. It should come as a surprise to no one in this House to hear that the province's medical license review system is clearly broken. It causes licensed revoked motorists to wait well beyond ministry-stated timelines for review and often leads to eventual overturned decisions while motorists' lives are put on hold. And I commend my colleague for coming forward with a proposal that will at least speed things up somewhat for those that are cleared by a physician for driving. And it's as simple as that, Speaker. Today's motion calls on the ministry to institute a 5-business-day service guarantee for reinstating driver's licenses following the submission of a medical review highlighting no issues that would warrant a continued suspension. A bit of fast-track process for the medically fit, who should not be forced to face unacceptable delays that can impact so many aspects of their lives. Just think of how much we depend on the ability to drive, Speaker, and then think of those in our more rural and remote areas where distances to work, the doctor's office, or just a grocery store are that much longer and that much more difficult to access without the bus and train transportation systems we enjoy in the more urban areas. Now, Speaker, we all want our roads to be safe. There are those out there with medical concerns who, obviously under the supervision of medical professionals, have said that they are not fit to drive. There's no doubt that there are many instances when medical conditions should prevent a person from having a license. That said, there are also those out there who, again, under supervision of medical professionals, have been cleared for takeoff. They've had medical approval to get behind the wheel, and yet they have to wait and endure further impacts caused by a suspension that in these cases are not actually warranted. Now, we understand the need to review the medical professional's assessment and make sure we get it right, but it's the time to actually get the folks to review the file that's the problem. 30 business days is simply too long, and as many of us know from the stories that come into our offices, even that extended timeline is not often met. While the ministry website tells Ontario residents the medical review section will review your case and take appropriate action within 30 business days, the truth is that for some folks, it's taking close to double that time. To many of those waiting for the official go-ahead, it doesn't make sense to them that it took only a day to suspend their license based on a report, and then it takes 30 business days or longer to reinstate that same license following a physician's clearance. As I said, I'm sure any of us here could take a glance at the office inbox and find examples of exactly what we're talking about here. I have one from a constituent in my riding who contacted me last year, who lost his job and much more after being submerged into a medical license review system following a stroke. He writes, "My experience with the ministry has not only caused me inconvenience, it has cost me my job and left me unable to support myself for over 6 months. And now it is costing me an additional $575 for an assessment that I must go to before they will even consider giving me my license back. Here is my nightmare. I had a stroke on September 2nd of last year while driving home from work. On October 22nd, I received a letter from the Ministry of Transportation dated October 15th advising me that as of October 24th, my driver's license would be suspended. I immediately took the required form to my doctor and had him fill it out. 30 business days from then was around December 5th. When I still had no word by December 18th, I called. When I finally spoke to a ministry person, I was advised that they had never received the report from my doctor's office. I immediately called the doctor and another copy of the report was sent that day. I confirmed this a couple days later and it was received on December 18th, 2014. During this entire time, since the day of my stroke, September 2nd, I had not been able to return to work. By Christmas, I had recovered significantly, and the doctor and therapist said there was no reason why I could not go back to work, at least on a part-time basis, except that I had no way to get there since I could not drive. I live in Oshawa, or I live in Kitchener, and I work in Toronto. My last EI check was January 10th. Since that date, I had no income at all. He goes on to say that I heard nothing further until mid-February when I called them. The ministry representative advised me that it had been indeed 39 business days since they had received my doctor's report, but they were extremely busy and there was a backlog. I finally got a letter on March 9th informing me that in order to make a decision regarding my driver's license, that I would have to go for an assessment. The earliest date I could book was April 1st, 2015, at a cost for the 3-hour assessment, again at $575. One last footnote. I was advised last week that the company I have worked for the last 15 years has been sold and the new owners are bringing in their own employees with them, so my services will no longer be needed. And it was that last note wasn't hard enough to take. It only gets worse when you hear the conclusion that when, after my office got involved and had the gentleman's assessment walked over to have his review seen immediately, he was approved to go back on the road just like that. So, an 8-month journey that could have been much less if MTO had heeded the doctor's assessment in October. Now, quickly, I just want to commend Alana Tersinik. She is Alana Tersini. I'm sorry, Alana. Alana, as many of you will know, works with MPP's offices to help constituents when they are in a driver's license predicament, like many of them are. And she does outstanding work. She is extremely responsive and does a ton of files, no doubt, across the province. And so I want to make a special mention of her and thank her for her years of service to Ontario and to Ontario motorists, and especially to the many MPP offices that she helps. Alana Tersini, thank you very much. And with that, I want to again commend my colleague, the member from Stormont Dundas St. Glengarry, by bringing this important initiative forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate. I recognize the member from Windsor West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always a pleasure to rise on behalf of my constituents of Windsor West, and I'm pleased to be able to rise and speak to the motion today, Motion 7, the driver's license reinstatement. I'd like to thank the member from Stormont Dundas South Glary for bringing the motion forward. I think it's a very important topic. I know it has affected many people in my riding and across the province. I know several members have already spent some time kind of providing a summary of the motion, so I don't want to go into too much detail and repeat what so many others have already talked about. So I just have some key points in the 5 minutes I have left to touch on. The motion calls for a 5-business-day service guarantee for reinstating driver's licenses for anyone that has had their license suspended for medical reasons. So in order for that to happen, you have to have a physician certify that first they have to see that the person is unfit to drive medically to have the license suspended, and then to have it reinstated, a physician has to certify that whatever the particular issue was has since been rectified and the person is now again fit to drive. And I think everybody in this room knows that at times it is necessary for someone to have their license suspended for medical reasons. It's not their fault by any means. But we are all susceptible to illnesses, and for some people, those illnesses mean that they should not be on the road, and safety should always be paramount on the road. And I think it's important to note that when somebody is having their license suspended for medical reasons, that can be done very quickly, which is a good thing. Sometimes it's a matter of a few hours for the process to take place to have somebody's license suspended. So again, that's good, because we don't want somebody on the road who's not safe being there, either for themselves or for those around them. But unfortunately, when a physician, a professional, has since said that somebody is now medically fit to drive, so they're okay, whatever the issue has been rectified, the process is not as quick or as timely as it is to take the license away. And I think that's a big problem for many people, for many reasons. Many of them were discussed today. We've heard stories of people who have to drive in order for work. That's their livelihood. I'm not just talking about getting to work, which is an issue, but they actually drive for a living. And so for that license to take as long as it does in some cases for them to get it back, they end up losing their employment. They lose their income, which is really unfair. And so I think that if there's a process in place to remove a license as quickly as a few hours, there should be a process in place to get someone their license back in a reasonable time frame. And I think what the member from Stormont Dundas South Glengarry, the 5 business days, is asking for and suggesting is not unreasonable. If they can work so quickly to take it away, they should be able to work fairly quickly to reinstate the driver's license. Absolutely. There are a few of my colleagues who have spoken on different occasions about this particular issue. They've highlighted that it can take up to 30 days or more in some cases for driver's licenses to be reinstated. And in fact, in 2014-2015, Ontario Ombudsman Andre Marianne received 243 complaints about the ministry's medical review section, up from 141 the previous year, which is a 72% increase. And I'm sure that there are many people in the province who don't know that there is a process in place for them to even go to the Ombudsman to complain when there's an issue. So this number could be even larger. And I think that the process, as it is currently administered, really undervalues how many people, I'm going to speak specifically in my community of Windsor, it understates the need for people to drive for their career, for their family, even for pleasure. We have a beautiful waterfront, and people like to get out on Riverside Drive and drive the waterfront and take in the sights. And I think it's important to point out that in Windsor we don't just drive vehicles. We actually build award-winning vehicles that create many jobs for people in the area. So clearly, driving and automotive jobs are very important for us. Many people depend on having a license. That's their livelihood. That's how they get to work. That's how they make the money to pay these ridiculous hydro bills. The cost of driving has increased incredibly, which is a totally separate issue, but we don't need to put any more burden on drivers. And just to wrap up with my 27 seconds, I thought I'd have a hard time doing 6 minutes. The time's gone in no time. I just want to touch on what the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Transportation said, the minister from Kitchener Centre, which is the government never compromises the safety of our roads. And I would just like to point out to her on that particular statement, and I hope the members on the other side are listening, if you really believe that statement, that you never compromise the safety of our roads, then you really should honour your promise to widen Highway 3, because we've recently had another accident.
Thank you. Further debate. I recognize the Minister responsible for women's issues.
Thank you, Speaker. Great to see you in the chair again. And may I just take a quick second to congratulate the new MPP for Scarborough Rouge River. Congratulations, Mr. Cho. The riding touches the north-west corner of my riding, so welcome to the Scarborough riding as an MPP, and look forward to working with you on. There is a mutual interest concerning Scarborough. I also represent Pickering, but that's all going to change later. Anyway, I digress. So thank you, Speaker, for indulging me there. And I want to thank the member from Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry, for bringing this forward. He was my critic when I was first in Cabinet as a Minister of Consumer Services, and I really enjoy being on House duty Thursday afternoon to hear debates of PMBs generally, but I've always appreciated my good working relationship with him on issues concerning consumer services at that time, and I enjoy hearing the debate as well. So we've heard about a number of things related to this motion, and I think the debate here has been quite constructive, and you've heard from the government members about some of the statistics, including that MTO is currently meeting or exceeding the 30-day customer service standard. They're processing 90% of cases within 10 days. So that's pretty fantastic. It doesn't mean that there isn't room to improve, Speaker, of course. But I want to touch on something related to this. I had a constituent involved in a case similar to this, a very special constituent, Speaker. And that constituent is my husband. So shortly after I became the Minister of Consumer Services, literally a few days after, I got a call. I was, getting briefed, as you do when you get a new portfolio, and I got a call, and it was my husband, and he said, "I think I've had a heart attack." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, where are you? What's happening?" And he was on the train. Of course, he didn't stay in Kingston where he first suspected this. He decided to get on the train and come home. Too stubborn. I love him, but he shouldn't have done that. Anyway, we got him into care at Rouge Valley Hospital at the cardiac center there. It's a regional cardiac center. It's been there for about 20 years. They provide fantastic service. My husband had never had heart problems before. So in he went. It was late in the day, so I think it was the next day they did the scopy thing, I forget what you call that kind of surgery, and he had a stent put in, and they found out there was 2 blocks, so he had to have 2 stents put in. So then, of course, once he was stabilized, and he did quite well after that, the doctor talked to us about the driver's license situation. And I guess I'm telling this story, I'm sharing this story because on top of the rules, and I think I'm sensing we all agree that if a doctor says someone is not fit to drive, then that license must be suspended ASAP. The communication is really important, right? Because here I am in the hospital, I'm a new minister, we've never had these issues before, so it's important that the doctor talk to him and to me and our family to make sure he wouldn't drive, right? because sometimes it's overwhelming, especially if it's a new medical situation, you don't know what's going on. It's very important that that be reinforced, that he should not drive, and that I and the kids should make sure he doesn't drive. And my husband was compliant, and he needed to be away from work and to take it easy for a number of weeks. I appreciate some people recover very quickly from a medical situation, and I appreciate they're going to want to get driving again as soon as their doctor clears them. But in this case, Stephen needed to be off work. But I really want to emphasize the communication piece, because there's so much information about when you have a sudden medical crisis like that, about what to do and what the next steps are and what's your follow-up appointment. And by the way, don't drive. And, you know, as I said, he didn't get the medical help right away when he probably should have. Thankfully, he did listen to the doctor, who said, you shouldn't drive. And the doctor talked to me to sort of use me as a reinforcer to make sure he didn't drive, right? So that's really, really important. So I know the MTO is working to improve their processes wherever they can. I understand they're improving medical reporting forms. They're improving the use of technology. They're introducing electronic medical reporting that will see physicians submitting information to the ministry electronically and allowing some forms to be processed automatically. And these kind of efforts need to be ongoing. We need to keep up with the technology. But as said by all members of the House, safety is job one when it comes to our roads. It's not just the safety of the patients, it's the safety of everybody who is on the road. But as I said, in my experience, the communication piece was really, really important. And I'm pleased to see that the service standards are high, that MTO is working to make those standards even higher. And I think this is a good bill brought forward that is worthy of consideration. And I again thank the member opposite. He's a great member, and he was a great critic when I was in Consumer Services. In this case, looking out for the consumer, the patient, but also the consumers of our highways and roads to make sure that we're all safe and that we minimize the risk of injury or worse to us when we're on the roads. If someone's on the road, that shouldn't be there. So thank you very much, Speaker, for allowing me to share my story.
I recognize the member from Thornhill.
Very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm very pleased to rise for my colleague sitting right beside me, the member for Stormont Dundas South Glengarry, his motion for a service guarantee for driver license reinstatement. Now, it's very interesting because before I even agreed to speak on this, I wasn't realizing that almost every speaker here has mentioned my former profession of optometry and how valuable and how involved it is in who is able to drive on our roads. And I want to recognize everybody in the optometry, ophthalmology, and the medical community for all the fantastic work they do in terms of assessing people for their driver's license permits when there's medical concerns. And it's much more difficult, I think, than people here sometimes appreciate, because you can imagine the absolute hysteria by people when they're being told that they're going to lose their ability to drive. And oftentimes they have driven to the appointment and you're that uncomfortable with them driving that you really have to advise them to have somebody come, not only just to pick them up, but to pick up their car. Oftentimes it's something, very simple like cataract surgery, where once they've had the cataracts, with the implants, they're able to see, and like that. Sometimes 2 days after surgery or a day after surgery, the doctor feels they're safe to drive again, but yet the medical review committee of non-medical professionals, let's face it, this is, they're trained to just analyze what the medical professionals are recommending, seem to drag their feet, and I think that that's what we're discussing here today. We're not discussing about public safety. We're not discussing who should possibly lose their driver's license or who should get their driver's license back. We're just saying that once people have passed all the criteria necessary to get their driver's license reinstated, not just so that they can drive for leisure, but so that they can drive for a living, so that they can drive their kids to their programs, that once that they are in the clear, that why should it take up to 6 weeks for them to actually get the driver's license back? I think that there are many people who see colleagues at work who've lost their driver's license for so long and should have had it back and still didn't get it back and maybe even lost their job. It makes them afraid to go for medical checkups. So that's what really concerns me here today, is that we should be doing everything we can to encourage people to go for medical checkups, and yet when they're hearing from people that it took so long and it was so difficult to get their driver's license back, they're stressed out, they don't go for the medical checkups, they can be having health problems that could be dealt with in a timely way, aren't dealt with until it's an emergency room visit, and it could be that the cost to the medical system is actually much higher than if they would have gone in the first place. People are stressed out when they lose their license, and we all know what happens when people have stress. They can have medical problems and dire medical problems, even strokes and heart attacks, because of the foot dragging by the review committee. And with electronic health records now and emails, not just faxes anymore, Madam Speaker, but with all the electronic communications devices that we have now, there's really no reason for it to take 6 weeks for somebody who's been cleared medically to get their driver's license back. I think that we're hearing about all the lack of bus drivers here in Toronto. How many of those bus drivers that could be driving for us maybe just haven't gotten their license back because they've had cataract surgery, and they thought they had cataract surgery in July, and they thought by September they'll have their driver's license back, and maybe the doctor wasn't able to assess them till August, and perhaps they were perfectly capable of driving the school bus beginning September, but they weren't able to because they didn't have their suspension taken off their license. So I think that there could be a better system in place. Perhaps people don't have to actually send in their physical driver's license and have a new one sent back to them. Perhaps we could have a system. I certainly would have been willing to have a locked box in a locked room with people's driver's license in it, holding for them until I got the all clear from the ministry to physically give it back to them. Why should we have to actually suspend their license, take it away, and print them a new license? I'm hoping that we're going to have all-party support here today for this motion. I think it's important, and I think that it's something that resonates across the province in every sector, in every demographic. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. I return back to the member from Stormont Dundas South Glengarry.
Thank you, and I want to thank the members from Algoma, Manitoulin, Kitchener Centre, Kitchener-Conestoga, Windsor West, the Minister responsible for women's issues, and Thornhill. And I think the issue that we're missing here is we've got the medical practitioner that has certified the person is safe to drive. And we see many cases, I've seen cases where we've had people come in the office where they've gone into emergency, license been pulled, they see the specialist and understand it is something else. But now they're into the 30 days. We've had people come in where the documents have gotten lost. Normally they just tell us to wait 30 days, so it's hard to tell these documents are lost until the 30 days pass and we're allowed to really dig into the case. Now, one case they said, well, we lost the documents, it was 2 weeks, so we'll give them credit for the 2 weeks, so they only have to wait 4 weeks. I mean, these are things, the doctor is given certification. This is not a safety issue. This is the person that actually you believed when they said it wasn't safe. They've now said, yes, it is safe to drive. And, you know, we have livelihoods. We had a truck driver that came in. He was in the point of losing his job. And he was certified okay to drive. And should have, in this case, should never have lost it in the first place. But he did. And he's subject to the 30 days. And then we have the issue with the office closures. When people go, they have to get there. They have to have a relative get them there because they have no license. It's just a function that really, when you look at it, what are we doing? I mean, I'm sure possibly the process is not working today. Maybe they have to modify it. But in this days of electronic document transfer, surely we can get a doctor to sign something off if they're concerned about the document, have them resend the same day, and get the service that our residents expect. And when you're looking at somebody's livelihood, I think it's not too much to ask that we look at trying to do a 5-business day, and hopefully they'll be able to beat that.
We will vote on the motion at the end of the debate. So orders of the day.
Ballot item number 3, Order M4, second reading of Bill 4, an act to amend the Pesticides Act. Ms. Thompson.
Member from Huron-Bruce.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And it's a great privilege to stand in the House today in the Ontario Legislature and present the debate, or kick off the debate, I'll say, on a very important issue that has struck all of Ontario. And it's Bill 4, an act to amend the Pesticides Act, or it's better known, as I worked with stakeholders across this province, as Support Agricultural Experts in Their Field Act. And
no. Okay. We have to move to second reading of the bill. Okay. So, all right. So Ms. Thompson has moved second. Okay, you have to move.
okay. So what do I do? Act to amend the Pesticides Act. Sorry.
Thompson has moved second reading of Bill 4, an act to amend the Pesticide Act. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for her presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I really appreciate that. I'm so gung-ho to get started on this particular debate because it's something that's near and dear to all of us. It's with regards to Ontario's food production. And as I mentioned in the introduction, it's Bill 4, an act to amend the Pesticides Act. It's better known to stakeholders I've met with as Supporting Agricultural Experts in Their Field Act. And before I really get started into the debate, I want to recognize the numerous stakeholders that I've spoke with. And I truly appreciate their time and their constructive feedback. I spoke to Beekeepers Association of Ontario, OABA, the Ontario Agribusiness Association, Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, CCAs, Ontario Institute of Agrologists, Federation of Agriculture, Grain Farmers of Ontario, Christian Farmers, and numerous county federations of agriculture, as well as soil and crop members. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize that we played phone tag with the Ecological Farmers of Ontario, but I truly hope I can get speaking to Ali in the near future. And in addition to all of those organizations and stakeholders, I want to give a special shout out to a few more people. First of all, Susan Fitzgerald of the Certified Crop Advisors, as well as Claire Kinlan. They have been a tremendous help in helping drill down and speak specifically to how we can make regulations work. And I'll get to that in a second, Madam Speaker. In addition to that, I'd like to recognize and welcome to the House Don McCabe, President of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. Thank you very much for coming down on a Thursday afternoon. You and I go way back, and I really appreciate your commitment to Ontario agriculture, your sage advice, and your dogged determination to make sure we get legislation right so Ontario farmers can be the best they can be. Thank you for being here today. And secondly, I'd like to introduce to the House Dave Ferguson. Dave has made the trek as well from Lambton County. He is involved with the local Lambton County president of the Lambton County Federation of Agriculture. And Dave is an example of the amazing stewards we have across this province. And when I say stewards, I mean stewards of the land. Dave recognizes the importance of creating pollinator habitat, and some of the members in this House this afternoon had a chance to meet him earlier today at lunch. He very proudly, and I know I'm not supposed to have props, but he very proudly shows what he's doing on his farm, how he's taking acres out of production in order to facilitate and foster proper pollinator habitats. And I congratulate him for that. And he and his wife, Gabrielle, who is very much an important pillar in the agricultural industry as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, though, There should be a social responsibility that the entire province of Ontario holds when we have farmers willing to go the distance to create habitats such as for pollinators. And I thank you for all you do. You lead by example. So with that, I'd like to get started by saying I want to be very clear in this debate, and it's important to recognize and celebrate the fact that in this particular issue that we're addressing today, with regards to pollinator health and moving forward to ensure our farmers can be as productive as possible, it's important that we recognize the agri-food sector as a whole has taken great strides to not only understand the issues and the hard winters and the compounding elements that contributed to a low bee population a couple of years ago. They understand the issue, they've done the research, they've created a pollinator health plan, and they've educated farmers on how they can be the best stewards of the land. Collectively, the industry has moved forward, truly making the current regulations that are on the books unnecessary. But, Madam Speaker, given that the regulations are now in place, I want to be perfectly clear with everyone in the House today that I did not introduce Bill 4 with the intention to challenge the restricted use that has been placed on neonicotinoids, but rather to take steps in making a difficult situation more workable for the men and women of our agri-food industry. As you may be aware, beginning on August 31st, 2017, subsection 8.2, Section 8 of Ontario Regulation 63/09 will be amended to prohibit any professional pest advisor that, and I quote, derives a financial benefit from a person who manufactures or sells a Class 12 pesticide or a pesticide that is used to treat a seed to that it becomes a Class 12 pesticide from performing a pest assessment. And we'll get into what that really means a little bit later, but for us who know what that means, the reason for this change, Speaker, deeply concerns me. Throughout the consultation process that I undertook over the last couple of months, it was suggested that the change to the regulations is being enacted based on an unfounded notion that professional pest advisors who work for a seed and crop or crop input company will automatically want to sell the treated seed because it costs more. Well, guess what, Speaker? A treated bag of seed adds no more than approximately $3 a bag in price, and in some instances, it's as low as 80 cents, hardly the financial windfall for anyone looking to make a big profit. In fact, the Alberta Federation of Agriculture wrote of their findings on this matter, saying, and I quote, "This regulation will seriously curtail pest advisor services currently provided by CCAs employed by the private sector to crop producers based solely on implied pecuniary or a conflict of interest directly related to the distribution of Class 12 pesticides." Interestingly, this implied change or charge of pecuniary or conflict of interest has not been demonstrated nor recognized to be of similar concern with respect to other competing crop input products. In principle, Speaker, Ontario Regulation 139/15 implies the existence of moral hazard where evidence of such behaviour has not been demonstrated. And you know, it's interesting because the Ontario Federation has also flagged this with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change directly. And in their letter to me of September 15th, Don McCabe wrote, "Many engineers, accountants, dentists, lawyers, and other certified professionals provide advice to clients, despite being employed or affiliated with a larger firm." So, Speaker, why does this government feel limitations need to be applied to one particular body of professionals and one that never has had a documented case of conflict to boot? You know, that question really has to be asked here. And if this is indeed the basis for such a change, it's disappointing and highly unfounded. In fact, Speaker, just yesterday, the Minister of Agriculture said in his response to my question on the matter that his own government is reviewing the workability of these particular regulations in question. And while I appreciate that very much, but it says to me that you realize there's a problem and you need to look into it a little bit more. And so I'm glad we're doing it collectively today during the debate. There are two more important factors as to why this action is this particular regulation and action limiting professional pest advisors is detrimental to the soybean and corn producers of Ontario. First of all, the changes to the definition of a professional pest advisor will have negative implications for farmers. Farmers will be forced to end the effective professional partnerships they've established for perhaps dozens of years with the experts who understand their unique crop needs, soil types, field conditions, and growing seasons like anybody else. As the Niagara South Federation of Agriculture points out in their letter of support, many farmers work closely with CCAs at their local supplier or with the seed companies of their choice, and they've developed a trusting working relationship with them. It is likely that farmers will want to continue to work with CCACs that they know and trust. The Essex County Federation of Agriculture also shared the concerns with me, saying farmers establish a familiarity and working relationship with their CCA over time. Legislating who they work with is truly unnecessary. Limiting employment opportunities of the already few certified crop advisors would just be another burden of regulations on an agricultural industry as a whole. Speaker, Bill 4 seeks to allow these relationships to continue to flourish, and it should be a shame if the politics in here cause them to die out in the field. Secondly, according to the Ontario Certified Crop Advisor Association and the Ontario Institute of Agrologists, as of December 15, there were 538 crop advisors, or CCAs, and 30 professional agrologists, or PAGs, licensed and willing to conduct pesticide assessments in Ontario. However, with the implementation in this particular reg of this particular exclusionary clause, the number of professional pest advisors throughout Ontario will be reduced to only 80 qualified advisors. And for reference, I would be nervous in the north because that leaves just 2 professional pest advisors to serve all of Ontario. And that's a shame, Speaker, and it should not be allowed. In fact, on September 11th, I received a letter from the Glengarry Federation of Agriculture with concerns about the reduction of PPAs this change would bring about. And they said, as far as we have been able to determine, there are all of 4 individuals that would meet the criteria that is set out in the current regulation. Furthermore, it's been disclosed to our Federation that at least 2 out of the 4, for their own personal reasons, will not be conducting pest assessments for area producers. The regulations are not working, Speaker. Bill 4 is a sincere attempt to make them workable. And I want to go on and reflect a little bit more about what farmers in Eastern Ontario are saying. And they've been very clear in letting me know that Eastern Ontario farmers will be at an even greater disadvantage than farmers in the rest of the province. And I have to share with you that Bill 4 also addresses the need to let summer students conduct assessments independent of their employer. And we also need to recognize that the assessments as they're defined today, the methodology doesn't make sense. We should just meet and use already existing OMAFRA standards in the Field Crop Protection Guide. Thank you very much.